We want to be able to show what OYSU can do. Marka dhalinyaro badan baa jirta who are very, very talented. They do a lot of workshops and seminars. And so the whole reason why we wanted to have this meeting today was to be able to show dhalinyarada wixii qaban karto. And so right now we're going to have workshop yar, a little seminar by Naima Mohamed Ismail from Australia on Displaced and Disenfranchised, the struggle of the people of the Ogaden.
Assalamu alaikum, good evening everyone. Firstly, I'd like to say that I am extremely happy to be taking part in this monumental and truly pivotal event, the second Ogaden Youth and Student Union International Conference. I travelled all the way from Australia to be here today as a representative of OYSU Asia Pacific. I know other fellow Ogaden Youth and Student Union members also travelled from very long distances to be here this week. And the unanimous consensus from us all is that if we had to travel distances 2, 3 or 4 times longer, we would do it without thinking twice. And if we had to put our studies, work and personal lives on hold for more than the week we have for this conference this week, we would do it without a doubt. This is how concretely committed we are to our cause as Ogaden Youth and Student Union. We are here to create awareness about the legitimate liberation struggle and the genocide and the crimes against humanity taking place in Ogaden. You can look around this hall that we are sitting in today to see and truly appreciate that this youth-led global movement, Ogaden Youth and Student Union, knows no geographic boundaries, with OYSU branches in every single continent on this beautiful God-given earth, unfortunately of which Ogaden people are not living peacefully. In the last week, during our closed meetings, I found myself taking in on more than several occasions how honored I felt, how honored it was to be at this conference, to be sitting and working with such a committed, selfless, passionate, proactive and intelligent group of young revolutionaries. Who are tirelessly fighting against the heartbreaking injustice that is happening in Ogaden. The room was vibrant with OYSU members from all over the world. This is, again, we must mention how committed we are as OYSU to create awareness about the legitimate liberation struggle, the crimes against humanity and genocide that is taking place in our beautiful home, Ogaden. The topic I will cover today in this talk is the displacement and disenfranchisement of the Ogadeni people, with a specific focus on the most vulnerable group of all, as we know, women and children. But before I do so, I would like to tribute a special thank you to OYSU San Diego and anyone who was involved in the realization of this truly pivotal conference that we are sitting in today. Displaced and disenfranchised, this is the situation of the Ogadeni people. Millions have been forced to flee from their native homeland. The key word here is forced. They have brutally been forced to leave everything they had, their families and their belongings. They did not leave due to a natural disaster. They did not leave because they decided that they no longer liked the weather. and they did not leave because they wanted to experience the life of a refugee just for the sake of it. The displaced and disenfranchised Ogadeni people have been pulled out and extracted from their natural habitat, like a tree mercilessly ripped from its root, or a bone brutally torn from its socket. These metaphors are a feeble attempt by myself to try and depict some of the pain the men, women and children of Ogaden are feeling. But surely, my attempt that does not do this any justice. Justice. What a beautiful notion in theory, and what an amazing concept in practicality. Justice, a basic human right, a right the Ogadeni people have never known, a right the Ogadeni have been systematically denied. Not only have they been denied justice, but they have been massacred and are victims of ethnic cleansing and genocide. This is happening under the scrutiny of the international community, which have turned a complete blind eye on the crimes against humanity that is taking place in Ogaden. And this, dear respected listeners, has been going on for far too long. Displaced, disenfranchised, genocide, and crimes against humanity paints the story of death, darkness, devastation, heartache, sorrow, and endless frustrations of a nation. This is the sad but true essence of Ogaden and its people today. The Ethiopian government's systematic genocide and crimes against humanity campaign against the Ogadeni people shows no mercy to anyone. It does not matter if you are elderly, a woman, handicapped, or even a child. If you are Ogadeni, you automatically qualify to be executed, to be tortured, to be raped, and to be illegally imprisoned for as long as they want. The Ethiopian security forces are given blanket impunity to kill whomever they want under the pretext of suspected support and sympathy for the ONLF. These crimes have been documented by renowned human rights organizations. Genocide Watch outlines that the Ethiopian government's policy in Ogaden is to suppress all demands for autonomy from Ogadenis. It has included gradual starvation of the population in internally displaced persons camps, a policy Genocide Watch calls genocide by attrition. Genocide by attrition is one of the many cruel tools that the Ethiopian government implements. It results in the right to life of the Ogadenis being threatened through concentration and forced displacement, together with systematic deprivation of food, water, sanitary and medical facilities. These measures, along with the frequent imposition of overcrowded living quarters, lead to countless deaths through disease and starvation. According to the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, IDMC, whole Ogadeni communities have been forcefully relocated to areas controlled by the army. Photographer Seamus Murphy, winner of 7 World Press Photo Awards, who has been described as a poet with a camera, went to numerous internally displaced persons camps in Ogaden in 2000 and captured these images. In these images, you can see that the Ogedeni people are crippled with devastation. Some journalists and photographers were permitted to enter the Ogaden at that time, which was in the year 2000. But now, there is a complete media blockade by the Ethiopian government. No international media, journalists or photographers are permitted to enter the Ogaden region today. So this prompts us to ask ourselves, why? What are they hiding that is worse than that they do not want the world to see? Human Rights Watch, in their 130-page report, Collective Punishment, War Crimes Against Humanity in the Ogaden area of Ethiopia's Somali regional state, writes, nightly beatings with the barrel of a gun, public executions, and the burning of entire villages, arbitrarily detained civilians in military barracks, torture and widespread rape and other forms of sexual violence. African Faith and Justice Networks outlines the painful atrocities and rights that hundreds of thousands are displaced following the burning of their homes and the destruction of villages. Livestock and other possessions are being confiscated. Genocide Watch also wrote that food is being used as a weapon of war. Massacres, torture, rape, and disappearances are prevalent in the Ogaden region. The Ethiopian government is using a systematic policy of intimidation, rape, assault, detention, and deportation against Ogadeni civilians. Thousands of people have been arrested without any charges and held in desolate desert prisons. They further write that the Ethiopian People's Defense Forces adopted a scorched earth campaign, destroying property, confiscating livestock, and burning their harvests. The Ogaden has been transformed into a vast military-occupied area. Furthermore, the Service for the Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture and Trauma Survivors New South Wales, in an article titled Ogaden, A State of Decay in the Refugee Transition magazine, writes, the range of abuses committed against the Somali people in Ogaden spans the breadth of human cruelty. Spans the breadth of human cruelty. What truth this statement resonates. The people of Ogaden have suffered and are suffering immensely. And to add salt to these gaping wounds, the Ethiopian regime has denied international humanitarian aid to Ogaden. The last glimmer of hope for the people in the form of humanitarian assistance disappeared when the Red Cross was expelled from the region in 2007. To date, all humanitarian agencies and any international development aid has been expelled and completely blocked from the region. The few humanitarian organizations that have the opportunity to go to Ogaden have to hand over all of their relief aid to the army. Hundreds of thousands of Ogadenis have frantically fled from the genocide and the crimes against humanity in Ogaden. Many of them are displaced, disenfranchised, and barely surviving in neighboring countries. A large portion of them have ended up in Dadaab refugee camp in Kenya. Dadaab, as we know it, is a semi-arid town in the northeastern province of Kenya. Now it is home to more than 450,000 refugees. Somali refugees escaping from the crimes against humanity in Ogaden travel months on end by foot through dangerous elements of which you and I cannot fathom. Along the way, they experience exhaustion, sickness, violence, extortion, and harassment. Many perish along the way. There are heartbreaking scenarios where a family of 9 people commenced the journey from Ogaden to seek refuge in Dadaab together, but only 3 of the 9 family members make it to the makeshift gates of Dadaab alive. The situation of the Ogaden refugees living in the Dadaab camps is dreadful, and undisputedly the most vulnerable group are women and children. They arrive in the Dadaab camp with no money, no food, no water, and no shelter. They are widowed, orphaned, traumatized. They are displaced and disenfranchised. The genocide and crimes against humanity in Ogaden by the Ethiopian regime has forced these women and children to desperately seek some form of refuge in Dadaab. Ogadeni women and girls in Ogaden are taken from their villages, illegally arrested, tortured, brutally raped, and kept as sex slaves in Ethiopian military barracks. Whilst in prison, many of them die from starvation, wounds, infections, and illnesses caused by the torture and the rape. Many fall pregnant during the horrendous ordeal and lose their lives before giving birth due to starvation, wounds, infection, and illnesses caused by the torture and sexual violence. And even worse, lactating mothers with the newborn innocent child, which is a product of the rape, are murdered. The dead bodies of the mother and child dumped, left in the bushlands for wild animals to rip to shreds and eat. I will now show you a short video clip of some of the women who are human rights abuse victims that are struggling to survive in the Dadaab refugee camp.